Welcome back to the deep dive. If there is one tiny word that causes, just the biggest, most persistent headaches for anyone striving for English fluency, it is the definite article. The.
It really is. It's this little linguistic terror that seems to have no pattern, but, the patterns are there. You hear the common mistakes all the time, and maybe you've even caught yourself saying them.
Oh, absolutely. Things like, I always eat the breakfast.
Exactly. Or, what are you doing for the Christmas? Those small, seemingly simple errors, they immediately signal a lack of fluency.
Exactly. So our source material today is this fantastic, really dense guide on definite articles, but we are flipping the mission. Instead of dwelling on all the times you should use the, we're focusing entirely on the art of omission.
Yeah, we're extracting the precise rules for when this powerful little word just needs to stay silent. This is your immediate shortcut to a much more natural, fluent sound.
Okay, so to set the stage, let's establish the central insight here. We use the to identify something specific, right? A singular thing.
Right, The Dog Next Door, the book I just read. So it follows that the moments we omit it are usually when we are talking about something that is already unique, like a proper name or a general category or a general status. We're moving from the specific to the conceptual.
Okay, let's unpack this immediately. Let's start with our first big category of silence. Proper nouns. Starting with people. When is the just never invited to the conversation?
This is the most straightforward rule in the entire stack. We do not use the before people's names. It just sounds jarring. It's Lucy is my teacher, not the Lucy is my teacher.
The name itself is specific enough.
It provides all the specificity you need.
And we extend that simplicity to titles that are directly combined with a name, right? So professional, formal.
Yep. Dr. Key is on her way, or Mr. Lawson has just left. You just don't need the article to introduce that combination of a title and a name.
But what's fascinating here, and I love this, is that the exception actually reinforces that rule about specificity.
It really does. Because while we usually omit the, we add it when we're using the name purely to identify one specific person out of a group.
Ah, so the article shifts its function. It becomes like a pointer.
It becomes an identifier. Exactly. So if I say Andy just got a new dog, and, you and I know 3 different Andys, you need clarification.
Right.
You'd have to ask, do you mean the Andy who lives down the road? That use of the serves purely to distinguish one Andy from all the others. It's the linguistic equivalent of pointing. If you aren't pointing, the article is omitted.
That distinction unique name versus using the article for acute identification, that's the essential thread. Okay, let's see if that same principle holds true when we move to the map. Geography.
It does. We don't use the before continents. Most countries, towns, or cities.
So Asia, Africa, no article.
No article. They're unique names. Same for countries like Canada, Brazil, Botswana, and cities like London, Tokyo, Fort Worth. They are established singular proper nouns. Adding the would be redundant.
But I know a lot of learners get stuck here because there are some very high-profile exceptions where we do need the, and they almost always follow a structural pattern.
Precisely. If the country name implies a collection, a group, or a plural, you have to include the. This includes names like the United States, the United Kingdom, or, the plural sounding the Netherlands.
And groups of islands.
And groups of islands like the Philippines or the Bahamas. The rule is consistent. Single entity proper name, drop the. Group or collective name include the.
And we see that pattern of omission repeat with specific natural and urban geography, too. Lakes and mountains generally stand alone.
Correct. Lake Como is in Italy. We climb Mount Everest. We travel along the Amazon River. Wait, I made a mistake there, didn't I?
You certainly did, and that's a really common learner trap.
It is. Okay, let's correct that. Rivers, seas, oceans, deserts, and mountain ranges all take the. We say the Amazon, the Sahara, and the Alps. But single mountains, like Mount Everest, and single lakes, like Lake Como or Lake Victoria, they omit it.
It's the grouping versus the singular instance rule all over again.
It really is.
That's a high-value piece of knowledge right there.
No.
Okay, similarly, when we are navigating a city, street names, squares, parks, they usually stand alone.
Yes. Cherry Tree Avenue, Times Square, Hyde Park. But, tying this back to the group versus specific idea, the guide we looked at did flag an interesting urban exception for certain generic street categories.
How so?
Well, we often use the when referring to a general municipal feature like the high street or the main road, even though they aren't proper names. You'd say, I'll see you on the high street.
Right. Moving from geographical names to commercial ones, does this rule of omission hold for businesses, airports, and major public buildings?
Generally, yes, especially if the name starts with a place or a person. We say, I'll meet you at Manchester Airport, or St. Pancras is a beautiful station.
She's at Yale University.
She's at Yale University, and know thee.
And this applies widely to the business world. Most company names, airlines, Apple, British Airways, Samsung, no,
They're already recognized proper entities. And don't forget, those shops and restaurants named after people, the ones often ending in fits or apostrophes.
like Wendy's or Harrods.
Wendy's, Harrods, Macy's, know thee. They're either these established proper names just stand on their own.
Okay, that covers established names and geography. But now we shift into the usage that is much more conceptual and, frankly, I think the most challenging for learners. Institutions and daily routine.
Oh, yeah.
This is where the usage depends entirely on your status within the place, not the physical location itself.
This is such a crucial distinction. When we talk about institutions like school, prison, university, church, we omit the when we are referring to the general idea of attending that place or, the status of being a participant there.
So if I say, I went to school in a small town, what does that actually communicate?
It means you were a student. You were participating in the process of education. Similarly, if you say he's in prison, it means he is an inmate. He holds the status of a prisoner. You are talking about the generalized function of the institution, not the physical building.
So the moment I switch from discussing my status to discussing a specific external interaction with the physical place, the article reappears.
That's the crucial contrast. If you are a visitor or you're going for a non-primary purpose, you have to use the. For example, we went to the prison to see Tate.
Right.
Or she's going to the church to find Reverend Marks. The use of the tells us the speaker is a visitor, visiting a specific building for a specific external purpose.
That makes perfect sense. The omission signals you're an active part of the institution's core function, while including thy means you are simply visiting a building.
And, the same nuanced rule applies to the word home. The is dropped when you're referring to the concept of the domestic space as a status or a state of being.
Especially with verbs like go, stay, start, and finish. For example, she's staying at home, or I'm going home. We would never say, I'm going to the home.
And here's a contrast again. If you needed to differentiate it from another dwelling, you would use the. You might say the home I grew up in was small.
Because you're identifying a specific physical location.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when it's used in the context of state of being at your residence, it's always omitted.
Now, speaking of status, we have to mention the famous transatlantic split regarding the word hospital.
Indeed. This is a great piece of trivia that highlights how quickly these rules can shift. In British English, they omit the when someone is a patient. Ruth's in hospital. They are focused on the status of being a patient.
But in North American English?
In North American English, they almost always use the. Ruth's in the hospital. They're focused on the specific physical building.
It's reassuring that our source material notes that either version generally won't, stop you from being understood. But knowing that difference is key to understanding the dialect nuances.
It's a perfect example of how the underlying approach status versus location manifests differently across the English-speaking world.
Okay. Let's move to the last major group of omissions, those related to time, food, and abstraction. Starting with routine and sustenance, we skip the before meals.
We covered that common mistake earlier. I always eat the breakfast is generally incorrect because we're talking about the category of food eaten at a certain time. We say, what do you fancy for lunch? Or dinner is at 6.
But let's use our contrast framework. When would the woo pop up in front of a meal?
When you are referring to a specific, identifiable instance of that meal. If someone made a terrible meal last night, you might complain, I am still thinking about the dinner you cooked last night.
Because you're specifying that singular, terrible event.
Precisely. Not the generalized concept of the evening meal.
And we extend this omission to festivals and celebrations, which are essentially fixed time concepts. Christmas, Easter, New Year's Eve.
Hanukkah, Eid, Diwali. We ask, what are you doing for Easter? We don't say the Easter. Similarly, months and days of the week, being unique proper names in the calendar, generally stand alone. June is my favorite month.
Now let's look at some specific times of day where omission is the rule.
This is where understanding the preposition helps. We tend to drop the when we use the preposition at before the word, and this applies specifically to points of transition or general periods like night, dawn, and dusk.
So we went for a walk at dawn, or I work better at night.
Exactly. You were referring to a general period. Of course, you have the notable exception of in the morning or in the afternoon, but for those shorter points of the day, omission is the rule.
Finally, let's tackle the general categories and abstract concepts, which I think often trip up even advanced learners. First, languages.
Right. We omit the when referring to a language itself. English is hard, or I'm studying Japanese. The language is treated as an abstract, uncountable noun here.
But this is where the article radically shifts meaning. If you do use the, you are no longer referring to the abstract language.
No, you are referring to the people who speak it. The article turns the word into a collective noun referring to the citizens, so the English people or the Japanese people. It's a massive semantic shift driven by a single three-letter word.
And that same principle of discussing a category rather than a specific instance applies to sports, games, and exercise.
We omit the here as well. We like football, she does yoga, they play chess. You're talking about the activity in general, not a specific match or a specific yoga mat.
And generalizing with plural or uncountable nouns also mandates omission. This is perhaps the hardest rule because it relies entirely on your intent.
It does. When discussing the general category, you omit the. We say they love animals, meaning the entire class of creatures. We would only say they love the animals if we were referring to a specific identifiable set of animals, like the ones in the local petting zoo.
Or with uncountable nouns, which we often treat as abstract when speaking generally. Do you take sugar in coffee?
Right. We're discussing the generalized abstract substance. The contrast is immediate. Could you pass me the sugar? Here, you are asking for the specific physical sugar container sitting on the table.
The omission signals abstraction. The inclusion signals specificity.
In synthesizing this, we see the pattern for uncountable abstract nouns like love, hate, hope, and peace.
When speaking generally about the concept, drop the article.
Love makes people do strange things. Peace is important for a happy life. Now, if you were to say, the love of my family is strong, you're making that abstract concept specific to your family. But in its purest, generalized form, the article is omitted.
That was a tremendous amount of ground we covered. Let's test the synthesis, because the real fluency win is being able to combine these rules in a single sentence. How about a quick quiz from the source material?
Let's do it. You should listen carefully to where the article is missing or where it shouldn't be at all.
Example 1. American Airlines is based in Fort Worth. Is the needed anywhere in that sentence?
No, that sentence is perfectly correct. We don't use the before the proper name of an airline, and we don't use it before the proper name of a city. 2 omissions. Perfectly executed.
Example 2. Cocoa beans are grown in the Africa. Correct or incorrect?
That is incorrect. We established that continents, being singular proper names, omit the. It should just be in Africa. And we also omit the before cocoa beans because we're discussing the general category of beans, not specific beans from a specific harvest.
Good catch. Okay, example 3. Bringing back that high-value status versus visitor rule. Tomorrow I'm helping at the school where my son works. Is using the here correct?
Yes, that is correct. By using the, you are clearly signaling that you are visiting a specific school for a distinct purpose to help out. You are not referring to the general status of being a student.
So the article is essential there to convey your intent as a visitor.
It is.
And finally, a geographic exception we mentioned. Manila is the capital of Philippines. What's missing or wrong?
We need to remember the rule about groups and plurals. We usually say the Philippines because it is a group of islands. It falls into that exception category for country names.
Fantastic. We've covered a huge amount of material about when to put the brakes on the, creating silence where a learner might instinctively place an article.
The overarching pattern you should take away is this. The rules for omitting the almost always revolve around categories that are already unique, like proper names, or things that are generalized, like abstract nouns, meals, sports, or things related to a fixed state or status, like being at work or being a patient.
And if you're referring to a single physical item that needs to be identified,
You'll likely need the article.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're referring to the conceptual or the unique, it often disappears.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. You now have a comprehensive mental checklist for all those situations where that little article needs to stay quiet.
I hope so. And, since we've learned so much today about the rules for silence when we don't use the, this raises an important question for you to mull over. How does understanding these rules of omission better clarify the underlying principle of when we definitely need the to signal specificity and singularity?
That's a great point.
Consider how the omission is actually a clue, a clue that the article is absolutely required everywhere else to avoid ambiguity. This is really the starting point for your next level of linguistic fluency.
A great thought to end on. Keep learning, keep exploring, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.